Welcome to the Your Brilliant Difference podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so delighted that you're here. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about a crisis in leadership confidence that is happening today. And now you might be saying, a crisis in leadership confidence? Is that what's happening? It seems so critical, and it is. It's so important that we focus on this. And I'm going to talk about the latest research that's out there to really put this on the top of your list to really make this a priority on focusing on what's happening in the workplace, how leaders are contributing to it, and what you can do as a leader to increase the confidence you have in your leadership, your impact, but also in your team. We're also going to talk about the ripple effect of that and what this research is also uncovering on gateways and portals that you have access to really reconnect and create more confidence in your team and in your organization with your leadership. And then finally, I'm not going to just give you the bad news and some of the options that you have to move forward. I'm going to give you three strategies, three ways in which you can move forward and show up with more confidence and integrity, at the same time addressing some of these issues that are arising as a result of this crisis in leadership confidence. So let's talk about the research. A Pittsburgh-based consulting firm, DDI, did a survey, and it was based on 1,800 HR employees and 14,000 company leaders. And what they uncovered was that there's this sense of management is looking at their leaders and they're saying, we are not as equipped as we want to be, and actually ill-equipped. They're looking at their leaders and they're saying that only 40% of them have the high quality of leaders that they see that they need in order to achieve their objectives, in order to have their impact, in order to execute on their strategies, and to inspire and engage their teams. That means there's a whopping 60% that don't have that high quality leadership at their table. What they also uncovered that this is down 17% from 2 years ago. And we can also look at, the sense of this post-COVID world that we've been living in, the shakeup in the workplace between the hybrid remote working workplace. All of these things that have happened in the workplace have shifted in the quality and the sense of leadership that we have happening in the organizations today. Management's also looking at their leadership, and they're saying that only 12% have the strengths that they need in order to propel the organization to that next level. So this is again another huge opportunity here. There's a huge gap that needs to be addressed and for us to put at the top of our agenda. What they also noted in this survey was that creating an environment for emerging leaders is critical, where they feel valued and they feel a connection to purpose in their work. And so again, a really important thing to notice here, that leaders today, emerging leaders of tomorrow, they want to know that they're valued for the work that they do, but they also want to feel connected and engaged with a purpose, that there's a meaning behind this. So what is this leadership in crisis causing? Well, two things. As a result, you're going to have a lack of trust in leaders. And the second is that your company leaders are lacking a sense of purpose. They're not feeling connected to your mission, to your mandate. It can feel very transactional. And that's not the way we want to be at work. That's not the way you want your leaders and your teams to be engaging and showing up at work. What this survey also pointed out was that when it came to trust, one of the key factors of how we can increase trust and build trust with teams was from the sense of vulnerability. The leader having an ability to be vulnerable, to maybe show their scars, but creating that sense of connection through vulnerability. Often we look at vulnerability as a weakness. It's actually a strength, and it is a trust builder. That organizations that have leaders that are willing to be vulnerable are 5 times more likely to have the trust of their teams. Now, further to that study, what they also uncovered was that leaders and organizations, their teams, their people, they need a connection to purpose. They need to feel like their work has meaning. And when we don't have that meaning, guess what happens? We start disconnecting from work. We start feeling energized and engaged with work. And all of a sudden, we just kind of walking in with this sort of meh feeling. As a result of this meh feeling, it kind of just builds and builds and builds. And then what happens? We can land in the place of burnout. What we know is that since 2020, burnout has increased exponentially in the workplace by 60%. That's huge. It's only 4 years since that pandemic happened. And as a result, we're seeing even more issues with, how we manage our work, exhaustion, not feeling connected, and then eventually leading employees and leaders to burnout. Did you know that 72% of leaders, when they leave the workplace, they have nothing left? They're that depleted, that drained. I know work can be hard and work can be challenging. At the end of the day, though, I still want to be walking out of saying that was a great day. I want to feel good, even though I might have been, climbing uphill for a while or for a few days, whatever that might be, because we're facing these challenges. I often look at a workout. We're not always like running out for that workout, excited to do the run or the Peloton or your spin bike, whatever it is that you're doing, because it's going to be hard. You're going to sweat a little bit. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be challenged. But at the end of that workout, don't we all feel good? Don't we? You go out, you go home, you take the shower, you're like, I feel so refreshed and energized. That's the way we want to be leaving our work. That's the way we want to be leaving our jobs, in the sense that we feel energized and can't wait to race home or walk out your office door and into your family room or kitchen from your home to really to engage with our families and talk about what an amazing day it was, even though that you had the challenge and struggle. But because we don't have this connection to purpose, because we don't have this connection of how do you add value and really feeling that resonance with the work, all of a sudden it's just really easy to just like, oh, it's draining, it's depleting. We pull away. We're not showing up in our best selves as a result of it. So what can you do about it? So I want to give you 3 ways in which you can move forward to really address this crisis in leadership and really have more confidence in how you are leading and how you are showing up. The first is to be more vulnerable, and more open with your employees. Now, this is not to be vulnerable for the sake of, now that you know the data, that, okay, if you're more vulnerable, then all of a sudden you're going to build trust. There needs to be this genuinity that comes behind this need or this desire to be vulnerable. It's not a tactic or strategy to build trust, but there is this authenticity and this realness. And so the first place I would say is just start with the intention that your sense of vulnerability, you're opening up to maybe share your wounds or back in the day stories of when you failed or your shortcomings and the lessons you've learned, that it's actually here for the good of the person that you're sharing it with, or the team or your organization. Maybe at a town hall, you get to tell a story about, when you were once upon a time when you were in this moment and what you learned and uncovered as a result. So again, the vulnerability needs to have a meaning and a purpose, always that it's doing good for others as a result, and that they're going to be better because of it. Now, if we're just sharing vulnerable stories or wounds because we think it's going to be a great way to build trust, often what happens, especially when we don't have that intention behind, what could happen is all of a sudden, you sharing the story, you walk away. I know I've had this in my moment where it's like, I said too much. It was like a TMI moment, or you have this sort of vulnerability hangover. And then we start to worry. We start to doubt ourselves. We start to maybe believe that or think that they're going to think we're less than or inadequate. And we start fueling our own insecurity. And so it really becomes this place of when we start sharing our vulnerable stories, our places where we've had failures and shortcomings, it really needs to come from this place of service, wanting to help and really do good for the other person, that the story, this moment that you're sharing is going to be helpful to them in some way. Another really simple thing that you can do is often your team's going to be coming to you. I need help with this. I need help with that. And now you probably have the answer. You know exactly what they need to be doing. And sometimes you don't have the answer. Or you might be saying you have a few possible solutions, but you may not know if this is going to be the best one for them. One simple thing you can say is, I don't know. Like, that's an opportunity. That's a demonstration of all your vulnerability, that you don't know the right answer. You may not even know the answer. But what if in that conversation you say, I don't know, but I'd be willing, if you are, to sit down and brainstorm a couple of ideas with you on how you can move forward with that. Would that be something you want to be? I can help you with. And again, you're making the offer, you're acknowledging that you don't know. And that's again another opportunity for you to really, build that trust and really do it from this place of integrity and genuinity. I don't know if genuinity is a word, but I will have to check that after the podcast. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was how to address burnout for your employees. So, one of the things I want you to be mindful of is we've been really doing this peanut butter or blanket approach as it comes to burnout. And we're labeling frustration, exhaustion, maybe stress as I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out. And you may not be. And so that's where I'd initially say first, really diagnosing, is this a burnout situation? Burnout is as a result of all those things, plus all of a sudden, since, from the stress, it turns out to maybe apathy. There's this sort of indifference of, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sure. Why not? That we're really disengaged and detached. There's sort of this impersonal experience. And we could be really depressed. So there's depression that sets in, and that really not feeling connected, not having those moments of energy or joy or happiness, that you're really in that depressive state. And from there, burnout happens. And that's where, there could be a physical collapse, a mental collapse, an emotional collapse. And again, this is not for me to be diagnosing. This is where professionals come in. But again, I want us to be really careful and conscientious of how we use the word burnout in the workplace. It partly because we diminish its value when in essence it could be burnout, that everything's burnout, but meanwhile it's this extreme state that happens after a series of frustration, exhaustion, stress, tension. After that chronic experience, if we don't address it, what happens next? There's, that apathy or that indifference. Then we get into depression and then finally burnout. And so we diminish the impact of what burnout is. And then all of a sudden it just becomes this word of I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out, I'm burnt out. Well, you may not be. You just may be tired. You might need a digital detox. You might need a vacation without your phone and your laptop coming along for the ride with you. And so really being conscientious on how we diagnose and how we talk about burnout in the workplace. So that would be the first thing I want to be addressing. The second is, how could you help employees when it comes to burnout? I want you to be really mindful of the precursors. There are certain things that are happening before we get to that state of burnout. Things like the excessive ambition. So there's this constant achieving. And I'm all for achievement. I'm all for ambition and a desire and goals, all those wonderful things. So it's not to negate any of that. I want you to go for it. I want you and your team to be super ambitious, but being very mindful of, okay, with that on top of them, then these other layers that come on top of it. And where's that ambition being fueled from? Is the ambition being fueled because we want to do good work? We want to have value and impact? Or are we fueling this empty void inside of us that we feel not enough or insecure, and that the more titles and more achievements we have behind us, that the more successful and worthy we feel? And so it's just a noticing of, where's this ambition and this desire coming from? The other is, again, working hard. We need to work hard. We've got to work hard. Hard work is part of the deal. This is not always going to be easy, the work that we're here to do. At the same time, just noticing if we're working hard and then harder, not taking breaks, no time off, and that is being done over a period of time. And so, this happens in yourself. And when you're constantly on, your phone is with you, you're answering emails, and 6 months later, you're still on the treadmill. You got to hop off for a moment. You've got to take a break. You've got to breathe. You've got to have that moment to escape and look at your world, and that what I like to call the tornado vortex that you're constantly swirling in. So again, that's another precursor, something to notice. The other is noticing for your team, are they neglecting other obligations? Had they started the year and they committed to going to the gym 3 or 4 times a week? I'm sure they told you. And are you noticing all of a sudden they're not? They're working later hours, but they said that they were going to the gym right after work before they head home. So that's a precursor. That's a noticing of, oh, I'm noticing, in that you can bring into your coaching sessions. Like, I noticed that, you said this at the start of the year, and how's the gym going? Just do a check-in with them. So again, you're not, naming or calling out, but you're just creating this conversation and reminding them of their goals that they had stated. And you're really just paying attention to the precursors that might lead to them to this state of burnout. All right. So that's the second one. The second one being, really understanding what burnout is, really defining it, not peanut buttering the whole everything and saying everything about burnout, calling it all burnout when it isn't. So really being thoughtful around how that word is used in the workplace, how you are labeling exhaustion, stress, tired, all those things, and understanding the precursors. The final is how to refuel and rejuvenate using your brilliant difference. So that's our work and what we do here. And I'm a firm believer where you get to bring your strengths, your natural gifts, your talents, and your skills. That's your brilliance to make a meaningful difference in your leadership and your workplace as it is tied to the purpose of your organization. So there's this innate connection that happens. So there's you and your work. Then there's the workplace. There's this impact that you have to make and that you're here to make. That connection, it fits so perfectly together where now all of a sudden you have more purpose in your work. You have more meaning and you get to bring who you are, these gifts, these strengths, these ways in which you solve problems, your expertise, your experience, all these things that you bring to the table. You get to use it in the workplace by bringing your brilliant difference. Now, I also look at the brilliant difference as the what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. Now, no one's going to do this work for you. Now, if you're one of the lucky ones where your organization says, we're going to invest in the Your Brilliant Difference program. Now, we've got two of them. I'm just going to do a little plug here. We've got two of them, one for leaders and leadership development and the other for teams. So for teams to really understand how they individually and collectively bring a brilliant difference, but also collectively as a team. So if you've got a sales team, a marketing team, your administration team, your customer service team, your leadership team, really understanding how you all individually, but also collectively contribute to the organization and your brilliant difference and the value that you bring. This work's important because it builds this connection and this relationship. Now, our research uncovered that 82% of employees believe that they need to be connected to their company's purpose, and that this will help shape how they engage with their customers. This will help them identify how they're going to deliver results and that impact that they have. And more than 2/3 say that their work defines their purpose. So if you have a brilliant difference or you know it, and now all of a sudden you've got this workplace who you are really aligned with, you get to do magic with them because you get to bring your brilliant difference, your impact, and help them live out and connect yours to their purpose and have this amazing work and this outcome that you get to create with them. So there you have it. So today we talked about there is a crisis in leadership confidence. The caliber of leadership that we require today to take us into the future, into organizations delivering on their strategic objectives and having the impact that they're here to make. There's a challenge and there's a big opportunity that is calling for us to address. We can address that. What we know is trust is built through vulnerability, through openness. We also know that when a workplace has burnout or energy depletion, the way we activate that energy is through purpose. And so I shared those 3 strategies, how you can be more vulnerable in the workplace, how you can understand and identify the precursors to burnout so you can help your team through it and navigate through it. And thirdly, we talked about your brilliant difference, how it is the perfect tool that you get to use to bring your unique gifts to add value and impact and alignment to your organization's purpose. So hopefully you've got tons of value out of this episode. I want to hear from you. And in the show notes, you will find a link to a survey that is an invitation for you to give us topics that are top of mind for you that we can address here, talk about, and answer for you here on the Your Brilliant Difference podcast. So the invitation is head on over to that survey, complete the topic request form, and tell us what you want us to talk about here on the Your Brilliant Difference podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. Bye for now.